Okay, it is 8:30, and welcome to week 6 of um, Introduction to Corrections. I had to gather my thoughts. I do so many lectures this week. Yeah, so we're at week 6 already, and week 6 represents the start of the second half of the course. Quarter is moving rapidly as seems like we just started. We did January, I think the 2nd. Here we are all the way to at week 6 now. And we only have 2 more lectures to go before the quarter is completed. So I'm going to go right into sharing my screen. Okay. And so anyway, I do want to take the time to remind students that one of the ways that most of you guys are missing your points, and that's 5 in particular, because in the course home page where I have my mouse now, it says all written assignments should be in APA format. That means citations in the body of the paper and references at the end. Very, very, very important. That's how you primarily miss your points. And if you go down here and you look at your module 4, a few students did not satisfy APA because of the fact that they had references but no citations. So it's not a difficult thing. It's just that you got to get it in your head that to satisfy this, you have to have both. It's not or, it's and. And it's just like, for example, if you're going to reach the number 2 mathematically, you can't stop at the number 1. You have to add the number 1 to number 1 to equal 2. Well, you have to add citations and references, and then your cover sheet, which most of you do, to satisfy your APA requirements. Very, very, very important. That's how many of you lose points. So here we are this week dealing with 3 issues in male prisons today, where your student has to identify the top 3 issues in male prisons today, and then include potential solutions for each of the 3 issues. So that's how you get your 20 points. But then again, remember, now grammar, sentence structure, I don't take a lot of points off. I remind people about paragraphing, and if I see a drastic grammatical issue, I bring it to your attention. But APA is how you lose your points of 5. So you want to maximize by doing both of these parts 1 and 2, and then completing your APA requirement. This same requirement about APA is set out in the syllabus. It is also set out in the written assignment, and I cover it in the open house and week 2 lecture and week 4 lecture. I cover it. I've been covering it. Sometimes it goes past you guys, and some of you don't even look at the lecture, so you don't really know the point, and you keep doing the same mistake over and over, and you're going to be losing 5 points for each of these assignments. That would include your project as well. Okay. Now there is one exception to that, and you will see that when you come up on it in your written assignment. I think that it is. It might be the Stanford prison experience where it just requires in-text. We'll see in a minute. But only one of these in the whole section does not require a a citation. But we'll see in a minute, and I'll show it to you. And then, of course, you've completed 2 parts of your project, and 7 is going to be your interview, and then 9 is going to be your final project. Then, of course, your discussion post rubrics, no one has asked me about that because it's pretty clear about what happens to you. Our next lecture will be 2 weeks from today, and that will be in week 8. I will, at the end of this course, take this link for week 6, and it'll be down here, and I also will send it to you as well. So I hope that clarifies APA for you. So our announcements for the 6th week, the prison experience, male versus female, and your reading assignment is section 6, 8, and 11 of the text, and complete the activity, classification, myth versus fact, and some thoughts from a prison lieutenant, which I will conclude this lecture with playing. I will take my headset off so that they said it comes through better when I do it that way, so we'll conclude without that. And then the issues for discussion, issues unique to female inmates. Of course, those were due initially for Tuesday night, last night at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. Many of you have done a good job of that. And then your reply post on the same topic is due Saturday night at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Finally, you have 2 written assignments this week, 3 issues in male prison today, and Stanford prison experience. I will elaborate on both of those in just a moment. Then, of course, my motto, adversity is the springboard to success. So now, to clarify that you know when these assignments are due, I've already said, but I put back here in the class again for you to see when the assignment is due. Your reading assignment starts on Monday, then your initial post was Tuesday, your live lecture is right now, your reply post is the 10th, your 2 written assignments are due on Sunday. You'll see that the 3 issues in male prisons requires APA citations and references and requires 2 pages. Okay, and you know what that requirement is. And then be sure to do APA citations. Oh, that's 3 mil. Okay, I want to do the other one. Let's see, I might just Stanford assignment. One of these is just references or citations, but I'll clarify that in a minute and then come back and fix this. So let's make sure we go now and take a look at the actual written assignment. And then I will go back and adjust that to make sure. Okay, first of all, the assignment, 3 male issues, male prisoners, 2-page paper, and then it tells you what to do, and this is APA format, okay? So I already told you about that. Now let's look at the prison experience. And I think I'm right. Okay, stress more psychology. And I think I saw this one. They might have changed the language in here in previous classes. Psychology begins, follow the slide below. Okay, so I stand corrected that this one now has gone back to where it says citations and references. It doesn't say which one. So if it's APA, it's going to be citations and references. And you're going to get it from this particular link here. You're going to open it up. And there was a video that was done. So you're going to open this organization, prison organization link. And then you're going to do it from here, okay, where it gives you the information there about being able to see it, okay? So you want to make sure that you click on this documentary DVD. It should open up. Yeah, I think this is the preview that you look at. At any rate, you can go ahead and look at. You don't have to order the whole DVD, but that's what you're going to do. So you're going to write the clips, view the audio clips, and then answer the following question in essay form. Citations in the body and references at the end. Okay, and your only reference pretty much will be this right here, where you get the Stanford prison experience. Your citation in the body, supporting statements that you use come from that also. So that should clarify that. Very, 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 very important. Okay. And then your discussion post as well. All right. So remember, citations in the body and references at the end for both of these written assignments. This one is a 2-page paper. This one doesn't have to be 2. It could be 1 page. But just make sure that you answer the questions. Don't just answer them briefly, and include the statements throughout your paper, but let me know. I'll be able to read to see that you actually completed the requirements by answering these 4 questions with citations indicating the statements that you make in your paper relating to answering these questions from the prison experience, Stanford prison experience, okay? And some of you, and a few of my students have had the full version and actually saw the full version. It was on one of the cable channels, I can't remember, but it was very, 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 very good, and they were able to see it as well. I think even if you might Google it, you might find it as well and be able to get more information other than this. The point of the matter is just make sure you have enough information to answer these 4 questions, okay? So now, having said that, okay, let's go back to lesson content. Okay, so again, here are the assignments, the written assignments, okay, and then the discussion. So we're going to take a few minutes. We're going to go over this classification, myth versus fact, and then we're going to conclude with some thoughts from a prison lieutenant. Okay, so let's go down. Okay, so as you should know, there is some variation, some differences in what happens in prisons. You guys have recognized that individuals at both male or female start out with what they call orientation, where they bring them in, and then during orientation they will determine what the risk level of these individuals, and then they'll assign them to an institution based on that risk level. So individual case plans can determine where they place an inmate. So they'll look at issues that are necessary for an individual. Is there a need for drug and alcohol treatment? Education, on-job skill training will impact the assignment. Now, you should be aware it depends on the offense that the individuals commit as to what level of classification they were placed in. Once they're incarcerated, it's going to be a different situation. You're accustomed to certain hours. You can do things that you want to do. And your whole society changes. And they call this prisonization because what happens is people in prison, in order to survive, to adapt, they take on the customs and norms of the prison culture. They pick up the language, as they say, prison jargon, slang, and even some join gangs in order to survive. And so it creates a problem. I've often said that when individuals go to prison, that even if they're not guilty of an offense and they determine later that they were incarcerated wrongfully, as many have been, that they have actually adapted to prisonization and have picked up habits that they wouldn't ordinarily pick up. And they will do what they have to do to survive there, including having contraband and things of that nature that are not allowed, like drugs and sometimes alcohol, and then weapons. They make things called shanks out of tape, and they'll put it around some object and making it sharp, and then it'll allow them to use as a weapon. And so two important issues that take place in prison is sex and violence. Sexual victimization in prison is not as big as it once was thought. However, I mean, with the legislation that was passed, which prohibits providing information and training to the staff. But on the other hand, it still exists. That's what I wanted to tell you, is that individuals. Now, I can tell you this, that if you go into prison and you are a sexual predator, such as a child molester or even rapist, but primarily a child molester, they have to segregate you because most prisoners take offense to, they could be murderers, they could be drug dealers, they could be some of the most violent individuals, but they take offense to individuals who are sexual predators, and they will tend to either kill them or rape them, and they're subjected to serious sexual assault. But the other reason sexual victimization takes place is because most prisons don't have conjugal visits where they allow a partner of the person to come and, you know, have time with them sexually. And so as a result, these individuals are already accustomed to living with having sex. Then they are going to continue it, and therefore they're going to assault other parties, or sometimes their cellmates. Violence occurs, as I've said earlier, from actual gang activity to riots. There's been a lot of those. And, you know, riots take place a whole lot in overcrowded prisons and in situations where there are not enough correction officers to satisfy the ratio of inmates, and there's a shortage of staff. And so the riots take place where inmates are hurt and staff members. Oftentimes staff members are seriously injured and sometimes even killed. And so these issues make it difficult, as it says, for staff to guard the prison and impact the goals and expectation of staff. So these things happen a lot in both prisons, but in male prisons especially, but many also apply to female prisons. But in addition to the fact that female population is on the rise, and the reason why is because you will discover, as I have, that many females are in prison because of trying to do something with a partner, and that male partner actually is the one that oftentimes cause them to result in prison time. I know a young lady, she ended up going to prison because she killed her husband. Well, the reason she killed her husband is because he was a wife beater, and she waited for him to go to sleep, and then she shot him. Well, that was a violation of the law, but and there was the defense that she had been beaten so much, the beaten wife syndrome, or victim of domestic violence syndrome, wasn't bought. I don't know if it was a jury she had or a bench, but at any rate, most lawyers I know, at least I know, I would be successful with being able to understand what happened to a person who commits that kind of crime. And most jurors consist of males and females. And if you get females on these juries, usually you can get them to understand. And particularly in light of the circumstances that we're living now with this rash of sexual abuse taking place with the genius, and with many Hollywood individuals involving people like Harvey Weinstein, and the list just goes on and on and on. And so with that kind of atmosphere now, I think a lawyer who presents a pretty decent case before a jury with females on it will probably have a chance to either hang that jury, which could result in a mistrial, or either to have that individual not be incarcerated. But females, it says, are more likely than males to be convicted of nonviolent crimes, such as carrying drugs and things like that for somebody, and those kinds of things. And so because of that, and most jurisdictions only have a small number of female prisons, and I don't know of any jurisdiction that has male and females in prison together. That would not be workable at all. Some unique issues, though, that relate to women, as you guys have been so good to determine in your discussion posts for the week, involve individuals being away from their family, particularly their children and friends, with the kinships that take place with other females in the prison, change them, that cause them to survive. Motherhood and other health issues, both mental and physical, are issues that are necessary for mothers who are separated from their children, and also many, as stated here, are subjected to sexual abuse from the guards or from the correction officers. And these are male guards, but sometimes female, but most of the time it's male guards that do this. So these things create different problems in terms of dealing with females who are incarcerated, and does create. You were right on point, most of you, by saying that one of the major issues is sexual abuse and the mental issues that females face from being separated from their children, which oftentimes result in attempts at suicide by females as well. And those are just a few, but those are the top two. So let's take a look at this myth versus fact. See what, is myth or what is fact. So inmates easily adjust to prison. and you can say yes or no, and then you could submit your answer, but I'm not going to type one in. Let's just say yes, females easily adapt to prison. Okay, let's just, and then submit it. Now, the fact of the matter is that depression and difficulties are common as prisonization occurs, as I talked about early. So the answer is, it is a myth that they easily adjust to prison life because they're going to face issues of depression and other difficulties that I talked about earlier, such as separation from their children and family, and then the attacks by the guards on a sexual level. Prisoners are controlled and inmates closely monitored. So let's see what they say. Many prisons are controlled by gangs, not correctional staff. I already said that a few minutes ago, and because of that, if an individual does not, then they decide to come together, the gangs, to create disturbances, and then it results in jail riots. So inmates are not necessarily controlled often, and they are monitored, but because of a number of factors, such as the high number of inmates in proportion to sometimes the shortage of correction officers, it's not possible. And so as a result, the continuing problem of gangs makes it that they really run it pretty much. Most inmates are sexually assaulted, particularly when new to the institution. I've already addressed that. I've already addressed that. Prison rape is, it says, less prevalent than previously believed. Well, I can say this to you. I think I understand what they're saying now, but the fact of the matter is that there are individuals who do come into the facility and are what they call naive or first-timers, or even individuals that didn't commit offenses, wrongfully incarcerated. They do continue to become victims of sexual assault, in addition to what I told you earlier about sexual predators from the outside being sentenced, and they do become frequent victims of sexual assault. Due to tight control, assaults are rare. Okay, you should know the answer to that. Inmates commit more than 16,000 annual assaults against staff, inmate on inmate, and assault is an ongoing problem for institutional staff. So I already said that, but that just reminds you that it's a myth that tight control of assaults is rare. It's the opposite. Question, myth. Prison guards enjoy their power and fight rehabilitation efforts. Correction officers are now more educated. That is why you guys are in college. Once upon a time, and you'll still hear this, that they look for officers, the minimum requirements is a high school diploma, but now the movement, and it's said in many institutions that the hirings are now for people who have associates and bachelor's degree and are highly trained, and then most educated individuals favor rehabilitation and don't hold animosity, because recognizing the fact that you're almost like a social worker, and that's part of your job as a correction officer. And those that are highly educated tend to deal with that. And when you look at it from the social worker status, then you want to turn that person into a new direction, as opposed to being punitive or punishing. You want to try to correct. As the organization is called corrections, it should correct, which means individuals should come out with some form of rehabilitation, maybe some more education, maybe some education that they never had. Some don't even have a GED. And then others want to go further on after that into college. The point of the matter is that prison guards don't focus on their power as much in the direction that correction officers are now, because of being highly educated. Women are seldom sent to prison. Well, we already addressed that. Gender-neutral sentencing reforms have placed more women behind bars, based on what I said earlier. Female inmates from quasi-family units in prison, including same-sex relationships. Well, females today tend to mistrust more and avoid forming close relationships with other inmates. And so that's not a real big thing that takes place. Same-sex relationships may take place, but not on the same level as outside, because of the fact that usually the individuals that form relationships with another one, particularly females, is to survive. And it's more like recognizing that that other individual might have power over them and control, and in order for them to survive, then they may establish a relationship. The majority of females are young and unattached. That is not true. Approximately 60% of all female inmates are mothers, and that's one of the problems that I pointed out earlier that creates a crisis situation for females who are incarcerated, is because of the fact that they are mothers, and separation from their families and their children especially. You know, one of the worst things you can do is generally separate a mother from their child, and that's what prison does. And it, again, puts the mother in situations where the mother can sometimes reach the lowest level, and that is attempt to take their life because of missing their children. And that's the end of that. So it kind of reiterates some of the things that we shared earlier. So now let me put this video on. I'm going to, I just removed my headset, and hopefully you'll be able to hear this video. Okay, and it's about almost 8 minutes long, and then I'll make a few comments after that. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my camera so you won't focus on me, but instead focus on this. And Steve Zepsel of Corrections at Minnesota Corrections Facility in St. Cloud, which is our intake facility for the whole department in Minnesota. I've been in the department for 28 years. I started as a corrections officer, going into corrections sergeant, and now my current position, corrections lieutenant. And also the team leader for our special operations response team, and I also do a lot of training in that.
So what do you need to be a corrections officer? What are the minimum requirements?
GED or high school diploma. You apply online, and then they set up the testing. The test consists of a writing component and a video component. If you pass that test, you ran an oral interview. A series of questions that they all get scored, and then you pass that. Then all candidates to pass that will fill out a form for criminal background check, predatory offender check, and a criminal history.
so you do not need a 2-year degree or any experience. High school is sufficient.
Yes.
Okay.
And then if you get hired, you'll have to pass physical exam, there'll be drug testing, testing, and then once you pass all that, you do 6 weeks of an academy, and then first year wins probation.
Okay, so lots of training that goes on, the job training that goes on.
Vast majority of the first 6 weeks is on the job, and then after that, you start on the job shadowing. So.
Okay, so if I were hired as a correctional officer, is there a typical day, or what would my day look like?
Well, you drive to work, pick up your radio, your keys, you put on everybody has to wear a utility belt, no cuffs, mechanical irritants, you report to your post, you can work anywhere from the living unit to your toll center to supervising a vendor crew. There's a lot of different posts for officers. The average day has a lot of observation and can seem to be boring at times, but that can escalate to very dangerous and wild times in a split second. A lot of our situations are just dealing with officer presence, communication skills, verbal directives. We mainly get our lights that way. If that doesn't work, go to the force continuum all the way up to hands-on, chemical irritants, intermediate weapons, whatever it might be. I mean, it's not uncommon. We have fights quite regular. We deal with a lot of incompatibility issues and people getting restored. It's just ongoing.
Okay, so you mentioned that you were the intake facility. So do you classify inmates? Can you talk about that and what level of security is this institution?
The security levels for the institution is go 1 through 5, with 1 being the minimum, 5 being max. They determine the facility's security levels with operational needs and instructional needs. For instance, the level 4 has more requirements for mandatory armed outside patrol, or you might have secure perimeter mandates for armed officers on the wall, things like that. So once you designate facilities, when they come into our facility, they're seen right in the intake area, the fingerprint, they're asked a series of questions, they take pictures of pictures, tattoos, they see health services right away, and then they're brought into the intake unit, which is the area I supervise. They spend about 30 days in there, they go through orientation. First full day they're there, and then they're seen by health service, psychology, alcohol, drug assessment, education, testing. A lot of things going on to help their classification. Within the 14 days, first 14 days, their case manager should enter data relevant to their classification score. And their classification score is a number, and it's a factors of your current criminal conviction. What that is, your past criminal history in the last 10 years, your behavior in prison in the last 5 years, and then there are blocks in the classification. For instance, if you have length without parole, you cannot go below level 5 no matter what. So it doesn't matter any of the other factors. So when was it 28 to 45 days of classification officer and your team meet, they give you a score, and that'll determine your classification. At that point, we'll decide by classification, treatment needs, and there's a number of factors of what facility you need to move to, and then we'll transfer from there. And it's not uncommon for us to get 400 members in a day, 40 out, so it'll be very busy.
So the intake part doesn't happen in a day or two. It actually takes a few weeks.
Yeah, when they come into E-House, they probably spend approximately the first 30 days in the intake unit, then they move to the next unit. Sometimes they can transfer right from that house. Probably in about 3 weeks, they're done with most of their intake needs, all their assessments and testing and stuff like that.
You talked about a lot of things that a correctional officer might do. And in our text, we've talked a lot about professionalism and issues related to just being healthy as someone who works in this field. What contributes to correctional officer professionalism?
Well, you're supposed to treat everybody with respect, be courteous, and give respect and give respect. order, have the ability to deal with the stress that we have in a center environment, and a way to deal with it away from work also. They tend to take the higher situations.
Do you have advice for students today who are interested in going into this field?
Yeah, most people that are good corrections officers, good observers, they're good communicators, they have good de-escalation skills. I mean, these people are incarcerated, but they are human beings and be treated as such. So that's what they command at the time. They escalate beyond that. That's another situation. Those are the people that are most successful. And like I said, there are a lot of rewards as far as you can have people. Sometimes you can make a difference in situations. But keep in mind, we go from it can be very boring and get complacent to very exciting in a split second. So you see a lot of different things around here. Really, even though it seems dull, there never is a dull moment around here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you have that. And I want to say a couple of things. First of all, number one, you heard at the beginning the officer said that the minimum requirements were a high school diploma, but I told you earlier that the direction that the prisons and jails are going in is to hire more educated officers, and some jurisdictions have actually changed the minimum requirements to require at least an associate's degree. And I know that if you're going to deal in parole and probation, you cannot do that with a high school diploma or an associate's. You have to do a bachelor's. But for a correction officer, there's still individuals who start. Now, I will tell you this from experience talking to students. I have one particular one who is now a major. She told me that from when she started with a high school diploma years and years ago, but that most of the people now that are coming in at a higher level, and that means they're getting their associates. And many of the individuals, once they're hired in order to move up the ranks, they will then continue through with their education and receive associates and bachelors. So I guess that what I am saying to you is you're being proactive by being in school. You're not wasting your time. You're actually preparing yourself for the direction that corrections is moving to a more educated officer. So just wanted to point that out to you. So there's no contradiction here in what this person has said in their interview. The other thing, if you notice, they talked about some of the transferable skills that we talk about, good communication skills, good de-escalation skills. You have to be able to maintain control. And then you also recognize that these individuals, no matter what kind of crime they may have committed, they are human beings. And you're a professional, as I share with my law enforcement people, that you should treat them with dignity and respect. I heard another corrections officer say in another interview that we have in this class that there are 3 things that will help you to become successful as a correction officer, and that is, in addition to what I said, is if you firm, fair, and consistent. That way you get the respect, and then the inmates learn how to respect you. I heard that from a female, and also, ran that by my my student that is a major now, and she confirmed that that's true. That's the secret to success. She has operated Statesville in technically it's in Crest Hill, but people say Joliet, Illinois, which is an all-male institution. But she has actually been there many years and has shared with me that she earned the respect
of the inmates because she operated on the basis of firm, fair, and consistent treatment of individuals. And so those are a few of the things about becoming a correction officer. I do want to remind you, as I finish here, that next week we don't have a lecture, but I do want to bring you up to speed on next week because of the fact that you have as one of your assignments your course project interview, which is the third part of your assignment. And it tells you to pay close attention to the fact that what you've done in week 2 and in week 4 particularly, selected your professional, whether it's probation, parole, jails, or prisons, include the answers to the interview questions as well as the discretionary questions. And then this will be incorporated into your final document. Use APA because, remember, you're going to still be citing information from the website, information from the officer. Remember, interviews are cited. Oh, okay, here we go. This is the one. I knew it was one that didn't have a reference page. This is it. I was misstating when I said week 6. It's week 7. This is the one where you don't have to have a reference page, but you have to have in-text citation. And so I will not deduct points this one time for references. But do not present this information in question and answer form. Instead, use complete sentences and cover the individual issues. You can number them, but write it in narrative form. Be sure to identify the biggest challenge of working collaboratively with people from various backgrounds and perspectives in your interview, as well as possible solutions. Understand and explain the role of diversity. Remember, we talked about diversity as one of our transferable skills and working with others. And so this is going to be demonstrated in this interview report. And then the remainder of your research for this project will be to tie this all together in week 9, which when we come to week 8, I'll talk about that right now. So continue to research solutions as well. So continuing to gather information, sources, citations, and references for your future assignments, but not this week 7, okay? Remember, you have to have in-text citations. This is the exception to the rule for APA, all right? Because it states in here, all right? So that is very, 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 very important. And then if you don't remember the questions, again, I'll go back to Module 1, where I will show you again the questions. Here we go. Interview overview. These are required questions. These 5. In addition, you should include a minimum of 3 questions of your own, okay? And remember, research into select agencies, you did that in week 4 and so forth. But this is what is going to be involved in week 7. And if you look at the, let's go back now and let's go look at the course homepage. I'm giving you a chance so that you will, in week 7, do your projects correctly. So review again. I did cover this all in week one's open house, but here's your rubric again. Let me move the little mug shot out the way. Won't mess make it. There we go. Okay, we can move this over. Well, no, we can't. But anyway, the point of the matter is make sure you include responses to the 5 required interview questions, include responses to the additional questions that we talked about, identify the biggest challenge of working collaboratively. That's when we get to dealing with the diversity. Identify possible solutions as well. Then there's more. Use APA. APA includes citations and references. Cite the sources and include the title page. That's the reference title page. Make sure you have your references. Then make sure that your grammar and spelling, you want to make sure that's corrected. Then you're dealing with the demonstrate effective uses of grammar, diversity. Demonstrate awareness of the meaning of diversity by what you're dealing with in terms of it. You'll get 3 points for that, and then that adds up to 25 points. And that's the requirement. Make sure that that's included in your week 7 project. I'm not going to talk about the written assignment for week 7, but I do want to make sure that, now, make sure, again, that at this point, you should be well on your way to getting your interview set up. You had a lot of time. I've given you since week 1 what to expect in the future. And then week 2, all you had to do was provide the information about who it is or what kind of agency, and you had the right kind of agency. 1 of 4, again, probation, parole, jail, or prison. Not law enforcement, not attorneys, not any of those things. Not involving ride-alongs or any of those types of things. And then the other thing for week 4, which I've graded, I'm still in the process of grading some of yours now. I will be finished in the next, by tomorrow for sure, with your written assignments for week 4 project. But it is important that you understand what is required in week 7, and then you just have the final that's due week 9. And so with that, I am going to go back to the classroom, and at this point, I'm going to, if you have any questions, tell you to reach out to me. You know what to do. You know the rule. 25th hour means 25th hour. It doesn't mean 2 or 3 in the morning. It means any time, because there is no 25th hour. If you figure that out, which I'm sure many of you have figured that part out. So, and that's it. So I'm going to say good night.